What's up, Picklebrains? This week we're going to give you 4 more killer dinking tips so you can beat your friends and maybe win some tournaments. We left last week on a little bit of a cliffhanger. If you remember, excuse me, I'm a little bit under the weather, so my voice sounds a little bit weird, but hopefully not too bad. If you remember last week, we talked about respecting the X, but we didn't quite give the answer as to who should cover middle balls. So to keep it really simple, everyone always hears forehand gets the middle, forehand gets the middle, forehand gets the middle. And that's one of pickleball's biggest myths, and it's not necessarily true. What you should be doing is covering the person that is cross court from you. So if I'm playing on the right side of the court, an attack that comes to the middle or somewhat towards the middle from the person that's on their right side of the court, or the, let's say, opposite side of the X, I should be covering that ball, even if it's my backhand. Same thing goes for if I'm playing on the left side of the court. I should be covering a ball that's somewhat towards an attack that's somewhat towards the middle of the person who's playing on their left side of the court. It can get more complicated than that, but this way at least you and your partner are on the same page if you talk about it and you understand who's covering that middle attack.
Yeah.
Oz, what can you add to that?
Yeah, I think something that people don't grasp is they always say forehand covers middle, and so they don't cover where they should cover, because in pickleball it's different than tennis. People that come from tennis automatically think, yep, forehand covers middle. But it just comes down to you cover middle if the ball is across from you. You just have to follow where that ball is. So not much to add, but it's just a very common misconception that forehand covers middle, and you hear it still all the time with people coming in. And in a perfect world, it would be great if forehand could cover middle all the time, but sometimes that person has to cover the line, and so it gets that backhand in the middle, which it will happen sometimes. So respect.
Okay, and let's expound on that just a little bit. So if I'm playing the right side, Oz, and you're playing the left side, okay, which is typically or should be the case when you or I are playing. But, okay, I'm covering the right-hand side, and now the attack comes from the person on the left side of their court. So that would be the person directly in front of me if I'm on the right side. Right. My job, like you just said, is actually to scoot over a little bit and cover the line. And Austin would know that his job is to cover that middle ball. The only thing we leave open is behind Austin, which is a much harder shot and probably going out if they're attacking all the way across there.
Yeah.
So Austin knows to cover middle because that ball is coming from the person that's, should we say, kitty corner to him or on the opposite side of the X. And I know to cover the line. Same exact thing on the opposite side. If the person on their right side of the court is now attacking the ball, Austin will slide to his left and cover the line, and I'll cover the middle with my backhand. Balls just come too fast in pickleball, especially with being so close to the net right there. So it's not forehand covers middle. It's respecting that X and knowing beforehand, communicating with your partner, making sure they understand the same thing, that it's not forehand. We should be covering the person that's across, not directly across, but the person that's diagonal from us. Diagonal is the word that I'm looking for.
Diagonal. Yeah.
If it's sped up to
it really comes down to following the ball. You just act like there's a string connected to you, your partner, and the ball. If the ball goes to the left, you both move to the left in unison together. If the ball moves to the right, you both move to the right in unison together. If you're moving towards the right, you're covering the right side of your body. If you're moving towards the left, because that's where the ball went, you're covering the left side of your body. So,
nice.
Now that that's a perfect transition into what we're going to talk about, is I think we're on dinking tip number 5 then, if we're carrying on from last week. So if you haven't seen last week's, it's not in any particular order, so you can go watch it after this video. We'll link it at the end of this video. But we talked about 4 dinking strategies and also some techniques that we can use to get back into points, just strategies that we can use to win more points in general. And so dinking strategy number 5 is dinking cross court, why we do it, when we do it, and how we do it. Because a lot of players will just get out there and just start dinking and not in any particular location. They just go to a particular location just because they were taught to dink, but they don't have a specific plan in mind. So we kind of want to talk a little bit about that plan. So Spencer, what is your goal when you're dinking cross court? What is your whole entire idea? What's your strategy?
Damn, I knew you were going to ask me first. So dinking isn't my greatest strong point.
Me either.
What's the word I'm looking for?
Yeah, it's not your greatest
Dinking?
strength.
Yeah, strength, not strong point. Wow, I'm really under the weather today. Dinking cross court. So before I answer that, I was just watching a match. This is very common in mixed, but I was just watching the gold medal match of PPA Atlanta. You have Ben Johns and Annalie Waters playing James Ignatowicz and Anna Bright. And so Ben and James are playing on the left side of the court, and both of them are covering a lot of court. And so the females are dinking cross court, right? And one thing you don't want to do, but something that is very common when you're dinking cross court, is to give any height to that ball that's coming cross court, because the guy on the left on either side of the court is starting to pinch middle, and they want to be able to attack any ball that might be slightly high, and they can do so with their forehand. So it can be pretty easy. I did notice a decent amount of pop-ups, and either on both sides, but either Ben or James was ready just to pounce on that ball. So when dinking cross court, we want to try to keep the ball low if we can. Also, another reason to dink cross court is the net is 2 inches lower in the middle than it is on the sides. So when we're dinking cross court, we're dinking over the middle of the net. And this allows us a little bit more clearance and less chance of an error because we're dinking over the middle of the net, which is lower. If we're dinking straight ahead of us, that net's a little bit higher, and you're more prone to errors by doing that. What are some other reasons, Oz? I guess I just can't think right now.
Yeah, so Alexa started playing in our room. We have 2 Alexas, and one is in this room. I don't know if you could hear it through the speaker. But the other one's in the kitchen, and Grandma's over watching Cal right now. And they must have said Alexa something, and then Alexa turned on. So I had to go unplug it. So I only heard about half of what you said.
Okay. Real briefly, I just talked about the first part. I think you caught. Try not to hit the ball too high, because whoever's hugging the middle is going to pounce that with their forehand. A reason to dink cross court also is because the net is lower in the middle. I went into a little bit of detail about that.
Yes. So we're dinking cross court because it's going to be the most consistent shot that we have. Far more consistent than if we go up the line. Because, first of all, the net is lower, like how Spencer's saying, 34 inches at the middle, 36 inches up the line. But also you have 21 feet to work with when you're going cross court, and you only have 14-ish feet to go when you go up the line. So we're dinking cross court also to pull our opponents, the strategy-wise is to pull our opponents off the court and open up the middle shot. Whenever we dink up the middle, we're doing the exact opposite. We're opening up the lines and opening up potential for us to hit winners down the line. So if you think about it from that standpoint, if you want to speed up and make your opponents feel uncomfortable, you're obviously not just going to strictly pull them off the court by hitting it cross court to just hit winners up the middle, because then they're just going to be hugging middle directly after they hit that cross court and dink every single time. So you want to change up your dink location from cross court to middle to back behind your opponents, and then just remember that it's going to open up that court that you're not hitting to. And if you can do that in not a predictable way, to where you're changing things up and constantly making your opponents guess where you're going to go, it really opens up those gaps. And in fact, Dylan Frazier and J.W. Johnson played against Andre Deescu and Gabe Tardio in the PPA Red Rock tournament. And I messaged Dylan and said, why'd you guys dink to the middle the entire time? I was really curious about it. I was trying to see what his strategy was for it. And any guesses for what he said, Spencer?
First of all, let me say, before this, Daescu and Tardio had beat the Johns boys.
Yeah.
And that was the second time in a row that they beat them.
2-0.
So Dylan and JW are not playing schlubs. They know what they're doing, and they know why they're dinking to the middle. That's a tough team. Daescu and Tardio. It could be argued that it's, definitely top 3, maybe even top 2 toughest teams to play against. So they know what they were doing with their strategy and why they were dinking to the middle. My guess is so that they could limit their attacks to the middle. That would be my guess, because if they're trying to attack out wide, it's really tough there from the middle. They're just not giving them a lot of opportunities, and they're ready for an attack back down the middle. But I don't know. What did Dylan say?
So attacks are definitely going to come from the middle when you dink to the middle. So that totally cuts off any line attacks. You don't really have to worry about them. All that you have to worry about is dinking when they go cross court to either side after hitting that middle dink. But what Dylan said was it opened up their ability to be able to attack down the line. So it opened up Dylan's ability to be able to attack down the line towards Andre, because he was on that right side and Andre's directly in front of him. And also opened up the ability of JW to attack down the line, because he's pushing both of his opponents into each other in that middle spot, and it's opening up opportunities for the line. The only way that Andre and Gabe can deter that from happening is by hitting their dinks back up the middle. If they hit their dinks back up the middle, then they can only attack at their body or up the middle. They no longer have that line. So they were trying to make openings, and their main goal was to hit it towards the inside foot of Gabe Tardio, which we're going to talk about in a minute. But their main goal was to hit there because that's Gabe's backhand side. But Andre would come over, hit a forehand, and now Andre's out of position. And if he hit it back to Dylan, Dylan would just hit a winner down the line over and over and over again, which is what happened. But like you said, not schlubs at all. They just beat the Johns Bros. But that's how it goes. JW and Dylan can't seem to beat the Johns brothers unless someone's injured, like how Colin was. But they can just destroy everybody else. And so I would love to see what the strategy is that the Johns brothers are using against them that's working. It seems to me that Dylan and JW constantly have the strategy of just out-dink our opponents, have them speed it up. We have faster hands than everybody. But they can't do that against the Johns brothers because they're not going to out-dink the Johns brothers. I just don't think they have it in their minds that they can, although I feel like they could have the ability to. But that just shows you how much more consistent at dinking the Johns brothers are, and it makes you feel like you have to create more, you speed up more, and it causes you to make more mistakes that they're going to then counter the ball. So, in short, that's why we dink cross court, is because then we only have to cut. We have a lot more room to work with. If we dink up the middle, which is tip number 6, I think, unless that was tip number 4, if you remember. That might have been tip number 4, was dinking middle, but it opens up the court more. We have more court to work with, and then we have to focus on covering the line. Okay, so we have to cover the line with that. The other partner has to cover the middle.
I like it. I'm having a little bit of trouble hearing you, Oz. I don't know why. It's kind of cutting out a little bit.
Let me see.
But that's a very interesting perspective from Dylan. I would not have put that together, but it makes perfect sense. If you can dink to the middle of your opponents and cause them to dink back out wide to you, it's a great opportunity for you to attack them down the line. And it obviously worked for him. One point I have to make with Dylan and JW against the Johns boys and why they don't beat them is I think it's more mental than anything. I mean, they're still younger kids. I don't know, maybe 22 and 21.
Yeah.
Like, I still think it's in their head mentally. And I think, Matt and Riley could get in their head a little bit too. Dylan and JW are the better players. But I think they still allow, even though they've had so many reps and so many games against them, once you lose a certain amount of times, I think a lot of it is mental too.
Yeah.
So
I totally agree. They've lost so many times to them, yet their record against everybody else is disgusting. Like, they just don't lose to anybody else. So
yeah, it's nuts.
whereas the Johns brothers do. So it's really interesting. But that's what separates the 1 seed and the 2 seed, is the fact that the 2 seed can never beat the 1 seed. Just don't have the ability.
I thought you were going to say that's what separates the men from the boys.
So it separates the males
No pun
from
intended.
the boys. Okay, on to the next dinking tip. So we kind of talked about it there, but their goal was to hit it to Gabe Tardio's inside leg, because that's going to be on his backhand side. Since it's on his backhand side and it's his inside leg, it causes your opponent to have to step back. And what that's going to do is probably cause them to be late getting to the ball, or cause them to pop, which causes them to then pop up the ball, because they have to move their foot out of the way. It also causes them to rush in another circumstance, because they're going to try to take that ball out of the air so that they don't have to take that step back and be in such an awkward position. And an interesting thing to note when you're taking a ball out of the air is, since it hasn't bounced, it doesn't have all of that, all of the same power that it initially did when it was traveling through the air. When it bounces, it loses majority of that power. I want to say 50%, but that's probably not right. But you lose a ton of power as soon as that ball bounces. So not letting that ball bounce, now you're taking it out of the air. The odds of you taking a ball out of the air in the middle and popping it up are a whole lot higher than if you let that ball bounce, just because it has so much more power and pop on it before that bounce. So hopefully that makes sense. Does that make sense, Spencer?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, good.
Yep.
So they're hitting it to that spot, so it's causing Gabe to reach in and take that ball out of the air on his backhand side, which is his weaker side, and it causes him to pop up the ball, to which they then hit downwards on the ball. Whoever hits downwards on the ball first is probably going to win that point. If he ends up taking that step back, he's now off balance, he's late getting to the ball, and now where he's hitting from is going to be a different position than he's used to dinking from, because he's going to be off that line quite a bit. So then his precision and his accuracy is going to have to be a whole lot better from that position. So that's dinking tip number 6, is that we want to hit to that inside foot, because if we hit to that inside foot, we're going to have a whole lot greater ability to create pop-ups. And we just need to make sure that we're hovering over the kitchen and that we're ready to attack that ball. Is there anything else, any other reason that you would dink to the inside foot or inside leg of your opponent?
Just one thing I want to add there is, a lot of people won't have drilled dinks to their inside foot, especially a lot of dinks to their inside foot. Anyone can get that ball a couple times and have a good dink. But if you're consistently going there, then you can figure out if this guy has drilled that, or if this guy is going to just start popping them up here or there and then just keep going there because they haven't practiced. So one thing I would suggest is drilling your dinks from every position to every position. Just do it over and over so you can feel comfortable in each thing. I think a lot of times we get out there and we drill, or we don't necessarily drill, we warm up before we play rec. And in our warm-up, we hit some dead dinks back and forth, all to the same position. And then we say we're ready, and then we play. When in reality, we should be trying to, like, things that I've done is say, okay, we're going to hit 150 in a row. Anything that's popped up can be attacked. Every time we miss, we have to go back 20 balls.
Yeah, that's
and then that one really makes it so you can go to different positions, and it makes it a real scenario, as if you're actually playing a match, than it is just pretending like you're warming up and then everyone's ready to play. So we're kind of done with that, So that's what I would suggest.
Yes.
When it comes to not just dinking to the inside foot, but dinking in general.
Yeah, it's so overlooked to practice dinking to specific locations, and that's why we're talking about it. Only the pros are doing that, and high-level players. Everybody else is just dinking to dink. They don't have a purpose behind it. So dinking tip number 7, okay? Dinking tip number 7 is why we dink out of the air, why we take the ball out of the air. I see very often people will rush the shot. They were told, take the dink out of the air, but they have no reason. They have no rhyme or reason behind taking the dink out of the air. They just do it because some coach told them to do it. And I see it cause so many errors. And there's nothing that frustrates me more than you get into this dink battle, and then all of a sudden someone reaches into the kitchen on a ball that they should not be taking out of the air, and they just hit it into the net instantly, or they pop it up and the opponents put it away. So, Spencer, what would you say is the reason to take dinks out of the air, and what's a reason not to take dinks out of the air?
Okay, a reason that I take dinks out of the air specifically is so that I give my opponent less reaction time on the way back. But I also want to, if you can make your opponent, if you can make yourself feel big and your opponent feels small, it's definitely a head game, and they may stop dinking to that area, or it may cause their next dink to go into the net because they're feeling like very crowded and very claustrophobic. And like, man, I thought that dink was low, but they got it out of the air, and it causes errors on the other end, and it gives them less time to react. But the only way you can do that, in my opinion, is if you drill that for a long time first. Otherwise, if you're the one that's reaching in and dinking out of the air a lot, you're going to be the one that's hitting it into the net, like you're saying, because you haven't practiced doing that. And that's a hard ball to do consistently if you're not practicing it. But those are my 2 cents.
And then what would you say is a bad time to take a dink out of the air?
Let's think for a minute here. When you're really reaching, when the ball definitely should bounce and you're reaching and it's low, and for me, that's a really difficult time to take a dink out of the air unless I'm trying to lob, but even then that can be tough. But reaching and specifically low, I mean, it has to go back over the net. So why are we taking it out of the air? Let's breathe for a second, give ourselves a little bit of time, let the ball bounce, and then go back over. If you get a little bit higher ball, then dink it out of the air. I would still suggest crowding the kitchen and trying to get balls out of the air, but when you're reaching too much and especially low, I just don't think there's a reason for it.
Yep, that's the main frustration that I see playing with lower level players is they'll reach, the ball is low, they're uncomfortable, and they're trying to hit the most uncomfortable shot. Doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
What it comes down to is if you are comfortable, then take it out of the air because you're going to make your opponent uncomfortable. But you don't need to be uncomfortable to make your opponent uncomfortable. It doesn't work that way. It's you're comfortable and you make them uncomfortable. So if you feel like you can reach the ball, it's high enough, it's lofted up enough, then you're going to reach in and take that ball out of the air to, one, take away time from your opponent, just like how Spencer was saying, because that ball is going to get on them sooner. And two, not only is it, what's the word for this? Not only is it going to just take away time from your opponent, but it's also going to pull your opponent off of the court. It's going to pull them to a certain position because as you take away that time, now you've pulled it behind them. So now they're out of position. So since they're out of position, let's say that you pull them out wide, that middle is open, just like how we were talking about before, and then you can speed it up through that shot. So that's essentially why we dink to the middle. Someone that's a really good example of this, who you wouldn't think is Tyson McGuffin.
Tyson.
Yeah.
I knew you were going to say that.
There you go. Maybe you would think. But the reason that people wouldn't think is because Tyson's like 5'7", 5'8", probably. I don't know his exact height. Do you know? I feel like you would.
Man, I was standing next to him. I feel like he's my exact same height.
5'8"?
I mean, he may say that he's 5'8". I'm like 5'7" and 5/8". Okay. So I would say he's right about there.
Okay, so he is 5'7" and 5/8". Exactly. And you wouldn't think someone that's on the shorter scale has the ability to reach in and take balls out of the air better than everybody else, but he does. And he applies so much pressure. And the way that he is doing that is by hovering over the kitchen and then doing something called pinching. So for instance, he plays on the right side a lot. So let's say he's on the right side. He's going to hover over the middle of the court. He's going to pinch his partner way over to the left side of the court. And then he's going to pinch his opponent by hitting dinks cross court to the other right side player. So he's pretty much sitting in the middle of the court, and he's hitting out of the air dinks and pinching the player that's on the right side. And what that causes this player on the right side to do is to pop up the ball, one, and two, they feel like the only shot that they have is to go way back cross court to Tyson's side. And so when they try to do that, they have to hit that ball up. And he'll typically reach out of the air, and he can hit a winner on that. So in playing with him, I played with him about a year ago, and he did this exact thing. I was on the left side, he was on the right side. And he like pinched me over as his partner, and then we were just targeting this player that was right over here. And I was like, man, that's such a good strategy. And it all came down to him hovering over the kitchen, taking the ball out of the air, which is applying all that pressure and pinching, making you feel like you're really pinched, making the opponent feel very awkward, out of position, and uncomfortable. And that causes pop-ups time and time again. So was he comfortable? Yes. He wasn't uncomfortable hitting these shots. Was his opponent uncomfortable? Right. Yes. Did I say? Yeah, I said that right. His opponent was definitely uncomfortable from him doing that. So that's dinking tip number, was that 8 or 7? Can't remember.
I think that was 7. I think we got one more.
Okay. Anything to add to that?
No, I love it. I guess I'll just repeat. Practice that before you just try to do it. If you're uncomfortable, I mean, that's a really good point that you made. Your being uncomfortable is not going to make the opponent feel uncomfortable. Your being comfortable doing it will make the opponent feel uncomfortable. Be big at the kitchen, but you need to practice it first.
Definitely. Yeah, I don't know. That just came to me, but I like when things come to me. So dinking tip number 8 is it's opposites. So first of all, when we're in offense, we're going to be hovering over the kitchen, and then we need to make sure that we recover. And where do we recover to? So it all comes down to following the ball. If our opponents pull us out wide and we dink the ball back up the middle, we're going to recover back towards the middle to where our it could be right or left, but let's say we're on the left side of the court. Our right foot is going to be near the center line because we just dinked to the middle. If we dink that ball up the line, we're going to just stay in the middle of our box. Remember that we're covering the line, but we're hovering over the kitchen line because we're in offense. Because we have hit an effective dink that's low enough, that's unattackable, that our opponents can't possibly attack on us. They could, but they're going to have to hit up, and we'll probably smash it. So we're hovering over the kitchen. If we dink the ball way back cross court, we're going to be hugging over that kitchen line, probably taking a step over the kitchen, over the center line in order to apply more pressure on our opponents, just like how we were talking about with Tyson taking dinks out of the air. So we're recovering and we're hovering. So recover and hover. And then the opposite is true. When we're in defense, we're going to take a step back and we're going to split our feet. Okay, so we're splitting our feet, getting in a good ready position, and then we're getting low, dropping our butt to the ground and getting ready to defend wherever that ball is. Can't remember the exact saying, but it's recover and hover and step back and split your feet. I can't remember the exact saying, but there is a rhyme. I'll tell it to you guys after I figure out what it is, but I'm going to let Spencer expound on that.
Yeah, I think you posted about that recently. If you are stepping back to get it, with all of these, I think an important point to make is where your paddle should be. And your paddle should be making contact with the ball in front of you. So another big mistake that I've seen us and I've made myself too is making contact with the ball, but it's in my body, instead of moving your feet properly so you can make contact with the ball in front of you and have more consistency. For me, I'm much more consistent if my paddle's out in front than if it's in my body. I mean, sometimes I've accidentally hit parts of my body because, especially my legs, because they weren't out of the way. I didn't move into position. Yeah. So definitely move your feet when you need to. You could be the best dinker in the world and dink to all these cool spots, but you're not ready for it to come back because you haven't moved your feet the entire time.
Yeah.
So you gotta, like you said, recover and hover, and we'll pretend that the other thing you said rhymed also, so it made sense.
Retreat, and split your feet. That's what it was.
There it is.
I just found it.
Nice. We can rhyme.
Yeah.
We got this.
I'm like out there filming that video, and I'm like, what would rhyme? Retreat and split your feet. There we go. There it is. So I don't know if that one will catch on as well as Recover and Hover has, but we'll see. But that is number 8, right? So I think that's all of them.
Yeah.
But that's literally what it comes down to. I like how Spencer said we don't move our feet sometimes and then we end up hitting ourselves. Happens all the time. And that all comes down to keeping our paddle in front of us. It should never be going behind us. If it goes behind us, we're going to hit into our calf because it's not out of the way. So keeping our paddle in front of us as well as moving our feet can be extremely helpful. There was one other thing that I wanted to talk about with the recent tournament. Is there anything else that you want to talk about pickleball-wise?
No, go for it.
So I just made an Instagram post about it, but Jack Sock and Christian Alshon got some beef together, and I wanted to talk about it because a lot of people don't know about it, and I think that it makes it a lot more exciting to watch them play, knowing that they literally just dislike each other. I think Jack dislikes Christian more than Christian dislikes Jack.
Did you notice how some of the players were mic'd on the sideline this time?
Yeah, I noticed that, and I was thinking, like, they aren't mic'd up well enough. Plus, these announcers keep talking while we're trying to listen to what they're saying. Why don't they understand that we don't want to hear them talk? We want to hear the players talk, especially when we have the opportunity to when they're on the sideline. But then they're still talking. They're like, as you can see over there, they're giving some coaching, and with this coaching, I'm just like, shush. They're talking right now.
The whole point.
We can see it. We can't hear it.
Mic'd up. Yeah. I'd love for them to be mic'd up during the match.
Yeah, why aren't they?
I think it would be awesome. I mean, it couldn't be that hard with modern technology.
At the Red Rock?
And if a player doesn't want to be mic'd up, fine. But I'm sure a lot of them will agree to it.
Yeah.
And I think it could add some more fun to it.
Well, at the Red Rock, I talked to the sound lady. It was one of the sound ladies, and she was on court. She said, do you see that over there on the net? That's all mics. You can hear that on Amazon Prime. You can hear every word that they're saying. She's like, I hear it all right here. And I'm like, well, I've watched. Like, I can't hear it on there. She's like, yeah, it's because the announcers are talking, but you can make out some of the stuff that they're saying. I'm just like, oh, man, imagine if you could watch it. Like, you could pay. I would pay to just watch it without the commentators. I like the commentators a lot of the time, but I would much prefer to just hear the players talking, hear their strategies, stuff like that. Obviously, with their strategies, they don't want that getting out necessarily. So maybe that's why a lot of the players wouldn't want to be mic'd up. But it would be so interesting and so captivating and such a learning experience for players. I feel like it would be a really good opportunity for people to learn just by being mic'd up. But
yeah.
Anyways,
one last point to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do. I think we agree mostly on which commentators are good and who we're fine with, and those that should just go away. I'm not trying to get anyone out of a job, but on Grandstand Court, I cannot stand Rob Cassidy and Michelle Esquivel.
Is that Michelle Esquivel?
It's so bad. Rob's there. He's commenting like we're listening to it on the radio. You know, It's like, no, we're actually watching this right now. So please shut up. Because we're seeing what's happening. We don't need you to tell us every little detail. It's just, it drives me crazy.
Yeah, I didn't know that was Michelle Esquivel. But if it's the woman that I'm thinking of that was on Grandstand Court yesterday or however many days ago for the Vizzy, that's brutal for me. Rob doesn't bother me too much. I haven't really noticed him like being Captain Obvious, as you were saying, but I have with her.
Yeah.
I didn't know that was a pro. I thought it was just some random person that didn't know what was going on.
No, yeah, she's a pro. I'm pretty sure she and Rob are dating, have been for a long time.
Yeah, it's brutal. It's brutal to listen to. If you guys want a brutal experience, just get on Grandstand Court. And listen to their commentating because it is literally just Captain Obvious. And I'm not judging them, but if I was a commentator for a match, I'm sure that they're told to just say everything that's going on, right? I'm sure that that's how that they're taught. But if I were a commentator, I would just be telling people, here's the strategy for this. Here's what's going on. This is why they're doing this in this position. And then I would be telling them things like about that player's personality, something, just interesting stuff that the people that are watching can't blatantly see is going on. We don't want to hear,
for sure,
look at that Ernie. He just barely hit an Ernie. oh my gosh, he defended the Ernie. Oh my gosh, now we're going back. We're hitting overheads. It's like, in what world do we want to hear what we're seeing? Like, we can already see it happening. I think that's literally what it comes down to. Let's just hear the strategy that's going on. People want to learn a little bit as they're watching. And then for the most part, just zip it. Zip the lip and let people play.
Yeah. Yeah. Any commentary should definitely be not during the point.
During the point.
And yeah, like you said, like if you don't know the strategy and if you don't know why they're doing the things that they're doing, you should not be the one in the booth doing the commentary.
Yeah. Which I feel like those two would. I didn't know they were pros. I had the woman, Michelle. I did not know that was
Michelle Esquivel.
I did not know that was a pro. I would have never guessed. I would have guessed it was just the daughter of one of the producers or something.
And I guess I'm looking for some hate today, but also I don't know if you heard the other day, Jessie Irvin was on there. You know, and I know she's not getting paid for it. They just had her on there for a little while. She was like nails on a chalkboard, man. So bad, and talking through the points. And it's possible she's never watched a pro match because she's always playing. So there's that too. But man, was she bad. So there's some more negativity for you, but there are a lot that I really like. I know that Kyle McKenzie is coaching a lot more, but I'd love to hear more from him. And he knows to do it when the point's not going on, but he's one of the best. Adam Stone, I'm just fine listening to. He does a good job. Anyway, there's a lot of good ones, but there's some bad ones, and sometimes I just can't take it. You got to just press mute. But my problem with pressing mute, people are like, well, why don't you just press mute? Because I want to hear the ball hit the paddle.
Yeah.
I want to hear that rhythm. I like to hear what's going on the court, but without the commentary.
It'd be nice. I'd pay an extra few bucks a month or whatever. I don't pay anything right now, but I'd pay extra.
Get us a premium subscription.
Give us a premium subscription for $10 a month or something like that.
Yeah.
That might make it a little bit more worth it. But yeah, I can't think of his name right now, but there's another guy. He's an older guy. He owns the Seattle Pioneers. He's good. I really like him. He has really good sayings. He gives good tips.
Dave Fleming?
Yes, he's entertaining to listen to.
Yeah.
He doesn't just state
really
the obvious,
too.
though he has. I mean, everybody has their faults, and he states the obvious sometimes, but everybody's going to do that. But he's entertaining to listen to, so there's some really good ones out there. And then if you go to Grandstand Court, you're in trouble.
Oh, man.
But the beef.
And sometimes they'll have senior pros on Grandstand Court. Nobody knows who they are. And it's so obvious they've never seen a live stream before in their life.
Yes, they never
They're just talking about it, and they're pronouncing names wrong. Some of those that they put on there. Like, they're literally saying popular players' names incorrectly. I'm like, oh.
The only player that they can say the name wrong is Quang Duong, okay? Because I don't even know how to say it.
I knew you were going to say that. Yeah, that's a tough one. I'm sure we're saying it wrong.
But I didn't even tell everybody about the beef. So what the beef was, Christian made a tweet, if you haven't heard about it. He essentially said pickleball takes a lot more athleticism and has taught him more than tennis ever could, and takes more athleticism than tennis does. And all this stuff. Anyways, had tons of professional tennis players tweeting back to him, which I don't know why they took the time, but they did.
James Blake, Andy Roddick,
Nick Kyrgios.
Yeah.
The only one that didn't comment back was Jack Sock. And so I'm like, props to him. Didn't take the time, didn't get into it. And then he made an Instagram post, and he was like, hey, my recent tweet has set the tennis community on fire. All these people are commenting back to me and really upset with me, but I stand by what I said. And I'm like, all the power to you, dude. I would stand by what I said too. I actually agree with him to an extent. I just think that you can't really compare tennis and pickleball anymore because they're so separate. With tennis, it's all about endurance. You're running side to side, and you're trying to stay in the point and outplay your opponent and make them move as much as possible. It's all about the serve, having a huge serve. Pickleball, on the other hand, has really nothing to do with the serve currently, and it's all about soft shots and placement. And being able to drop the ball short into the kitchen consistently. It's about dinking. It's just completely separate to me. Singles is a little bit more similar, but you're not going to get cat and mouse in tennis. So I am with him. I think that it takes quicker reaction time because you're so close to your opponents. Yes, it's a wiffle ball, but you're way closer to your opponents majority of the time, especially with speed ups and hands battles. You got to have quick hands. But that being said, tennis is going to take a lot more technique to get into. It's not going to be as easy of a barrier of entry. So to say it takes more athleticism, who knows? But I would definitely say they're two separate sports, and you can't really compare them together. But he obviously did because he played some pretty high-level tennis. He played D1. He also played D3. And he said about Jack in this Instagram post, he's like, Jack Sock's one of them. He's definitely getting better. He's coming up the ranks. I just don't think that he's going to dedicate enough time to be able to make it to that number one slot. But his athleticism can only take him so far. Anyways, that rubbed Jack the wrong way. So Jack comes into the Red Rock tournament, and they play against each other. And Jack just annihilated pretty much Christian. So beat him in 2 sets. Yeah. Said he had something to prove. Didn't shake his hand at the end. Jack shakes everybody's hand. He'll take off his hat, and he'll shake their hand. Didn't do it. He just did a paddle tap as he wasn't looking at him. And then in the post-match interview, he said, I don't know who it was, but somebody said that that tennis is easier than pickleball and something about la-di-da-di-da, these washed-up pros. He says, I don't know who it is. Might have been that guy that I just beat, la-di-da-di-da. So beef has continued on, which is really good. And then they play in this recent tournament, and as Spencer said, Christian wins. And I actually didn't even know about that line call, but that probably made Jack mad. But Jack was pissed at the end of this one, especially because he lost. And like Spencer said, Christian played incredible. He played so well. Jack was still hitting his winners, but he's so freaking sporadic. He's got to really hone it in. And not try to be the hero the whole time, I think is the main thing. That's what all the Instagram comments said. That's what all the YouTube comments said on the video. He's like, he'll hit an amazing shot, and then he gets to the next point, and he makes a stupid decision and hits the ball, and it hits the back fence. So at the end of that match, you can hear it, like how Spencer was saying, they're kind of mic'd up at the end. And announcers are still talking, by the way. And you can pick up some stuff. But Jack said, that D3 is sure impressive, buddy. That D3 tennis is sure impressive.
That's crazy.
And then he was like, what, man? I'm paying you a compliment, something like that. And then you just can't pick it up because the commentators are talking. Then Christian got to that post-match interview and was like, yeah, he said something that set me off, but boys will be boys and we'll move on. So it's kind of whatever. But the dudes hate each other. By the way, Jack shook his hand this time, but only with his left hand on purpose instead of his right hand.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It was kind of funny.
Jeez.
But
no, I didn't notice that.
That's all the beef. So I look forward to them playing again. They're 1-1 versus each other. So it should be fun.
Yeah, that'll be fun to watch. And I'm not choosing a side either way.
Me either.
Because I haven't played enough tennis. But I will say pickleball is not mini tennis. So
yeah.
I mean, it's not tennis. It's pickleball. It's a separate sport. People can argue with me if they want, but they're two completely different things played in two completely different ways. So that I will weigh in on. But anyway, anything else, Oz?
No, I think that's it. Just remember to hit that subscribe button. Helps us out a ton. And comment below with anything that you guys want to learn about next, want us to chat about, any new dramas that you know, any new rivalries. And we'll be sure to talk about it in a future podcast.
Love it. Later.
Later.